Rush Limbaugh is going to discuss gun laws in the wake of the recent Oregon shooting. Let's listen.
Here's another stat, and this is from the same writer, A.W.R. Hawkins. 92% of mass shootings since 2009 have occurred in gun-free zones. 92%. These schools are not to be chosen randomly. They're not chosen just because there's a collection of kids that make good targets or students there. They're chosen because there's not going to be any resistance.
You guys want to know what the real number is? 13%. 13%. See, this is the problem with these guys. They're wrong. The things that they think are facts are not facts. And then what they'll do is they'll take anything that backs up their narrative and they just run with it. And then they'll come up with arguments after the fact to try to justify the incorrect premise and the incorrect numbers in this case that he comes up with or he gets from some other gun nut. Now, I want to be clear. I'm somewhat sympathetic to the right and their mindset when it comes to guns, because about 5 years ago, I actually was on the issue of guns. I was just flat out a right-winger. See, everybody listens to the show, they know I have a pretty solid libertarian streak. So when it comes to drug laws, I'm 100% with the libertarians. Legalize everything. Legalize, tax, regulate everything. I guess so. I guess they don't want tax. So I'm 98% with them. When it comes to war, I'm basically a down-the-line non-interventionist. So are they. So on social issues, I'm almost 100% with the libertarians, and I used to include gun policy in that. Now, I changed my mind on that because I'm not dense. So I read article after article after article, and then when studies started coming out about this stuff that, came across the websites I normally read, when I went through, I was, okay, so here's the counter-argument to this belief I had, here's the counter-argument to that belief I had, and I went, oh, I guess I'm wrong. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized, just because I'm in favor of all drugs being legal doesn't then mean that there's no regulation of the drug market. And it's the same thing for guns. Just because I'm in favor of guns being legal doesn't mean that I'm not in favor of regulation of the gun market. So, for example, I'd legalize drugs, but would I have crystal meth or crocodile or bath salts be for sale? No. And it's not necessarily because I'm banning it, but it's because I'm regulating what kind of amphetamines you can sell, for example, in the crystal meth example. What kind of opiates you can sell, for example, with the crocodile case. So crocodile is a cheap heroin knockoff, but it's filled with all these cutters and these chemicals that make your fucking flesh rot off. Well, then that specific kind of opiate is banned. Doesn't mean we ban all opiates, but that specific kind is bad because it makes your fucking skin rot off. Others that are more safe will be on the market. There will be caps, there will be limits to how potent the opiate can be, so on and so forth. So I'm in favor of legalized drugs, but that doesn't mean that every kind of drug ever is going to be available, because some drugs actually are filled with harmful chemicals, and you ban the particular harmful chemicals that were in said drug. So I think guns should be legal, but I'm not in favor of you getting a rocket launcher. I'm not in favor of you getting a nuclear weapon. I'm not in favor of you getting an anti-aircraft missile. I would ban those. Doesn't mean guns are illegal, but those specific kinds of guns would be illegal. So it's a nuanced thing. It's a balanced thing. And what you realize is the arguments that the right makes, they're always based on theory when it comes to guns. So what Rush laid out there, it's all theory. There are more good people than bad people in America. So if you arm everybody, more good people have guns than bad people. So therefore, the good guys with the guns outnumber the bad guys with the guns, and the bad guys will know their place and they'll never do shootings. Now, theoretically, that's logical. Perhaps that's true. But how do you test it? You test it by looking at the empirical data. And when you look at the empirical data, you find out very quickly that the U.S. has more guns than other modern nations, and we have way more shootings than other modern nations. So it just turns out that when you test that otherwise logical theory, it is incorrect. So it's like coming up with, some sort of medicinal cure to some illness, and in theory it works, and you can lay out why you think this works, but then you test it and it doesn't work. well, then you're wrong. People always say, I know this is a funny example to give, but like people have taken rhino horn for ages because they think, well, rhino horn, it's hard and it's masculine and it must make you more strong and more masculine because it's rhino horn. It's strong and masculine. So there's a logic there, right? Like, oh, this is a strong thing and it's part of a strong thing, and if I take it, I'll be strong. But that's not true. It turns out it's not true. It's the same thing with what he says for gun laws. If everybody had a gun there, it would have been okay. But what about the facts that show that's not the case? What about the facts that show when you limit the number of guns that there are fewer mass shootings? And this campus was not a gun-free zone, and there was somebody on campus that had a gun, and it didn't fucking stop it. There's a great meme of Ronald Reagan right before he got shot. He's walking around, everybody around him's got a fucking gun, and he still got shot. This idea of it, bottom line is, it's only theory, it's not reality, and he's just wrong on his facts. So when he says it's whatever number he gave there of mass shootings that are that happen in gun-free zones, it's only 13%. It's much less. And even when you have mass shootings in gun-free zones, like they like to beat up on Chicago for that case. They say, oh, Chicago has tough gun laws and they have a high murder rate, they have a high gun violence rate, so the laws are wrong. No. What are they not telling you? All of the areas surrounding Chicago have lax gun laws, so people go outside of Chicago, get the guns, and then go back in Chicago. And by the way, you have a drug crime and gang problem there, which is directly tied to the drug war. If you legalize, tax, and regulate drugs, that violence drops tremendously. So there's a variety of factors for it, but it's certainly not the fault of the gun laws. If anything, it's the fault of the gun laws in the surrounding areas where it's lax, and they can just go get it and come back into Chicago. So you have to be objective about this stuff, guys, and you can't always work backwards from your conclusion to try to make the evidence fit what you want to be true. So in your mind, you think, well, I like guns, therefore every argument I find that's pro-gun I will use because I like guns. No! You can say, I like guns, but I also acknowledge the fact that because we have so many guns in America, there are more mass shootings. I just don't care. At least that's an honest argument. What Russia's doing here, what others are doing here on the right, unfortunately, it's just pathetic demagoguery at this point.